Hi, everybody. My name is Rob Abel. I'm from the IMS Global Learning Consortium, and welcome to our Learning Impact on Demand series. We're here to discuss effective support for all forms of digital teaching and learning and what we're experiencing in light of the accelerated movement to remote, online, virtual, distance education, all of the above, and then some in the age of COVID-19 and perhaps beyond. Today, we have a very distinguished panel of higher education leaders from among the IMS members, the smartest people on the planet when it comes to ed tech. I'd like to introduce our panelists one by one. First, let's say hi to Sean DeMonner, who's the Executive Director of Teaching and Learning at University of Michigan. Thank you for that wave, Sean. You want to just say hello?
Hello, everybody. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
There he is. Yep. And next we have Dr. David Goodrum, Director of Academic Technology at Oregon State University. Hi, David.
Hello, everyone. And Rob, thanks for including me in this august panel.
Of course. And then we have Dr. Meggan Levitt, who's the Assistant Vice Provost and Associate Chief Information Officer at UC Davis. There she is.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you.
Hi, Meggan. And last but not least, we have Dr. Kelvin Thompson, Executive Director for the Center of Distributed Learning at the University of Central Florida. Hi there, Kelvin.
Hi, everybody. Good to be here.
All right, so I'd like to join in, welcome all our panelists, and just what we're here to talk about today is really to kind of get insights, understand from these experts in the field of academic technology, what they're seeing and what they're learning in terms of this unprecedented scale up of a very wide range of practices for digital support for teaching and learning at the post-secondary level. The impact of COVID-19 is obviously very unpredictable in terms of where it will go from here, and there are likely to be some changes, not just now, but in the fall, and maybe for the long term, and that's kind of what we're gonna hone in on here. So the first question for the panelists is really, what do you think are the most important learnings right now in dealing with this unprecedented scale up of students and faculty off campus? And I guess I'd like to go with Meggan for this first one. Why don't you kick it off for us?
Sure. Thanks, Rob. I mean, first of all, just wow. This has been really an intense few months for our field. And I think, to answer your question, I would do it probably pretty simplistically in that I think one of the most positive learnings we're having right now is we can do this. So I think a lot of us were well positioned with having a central LMS and a lot of tools in place. And so that quick move to remote at UC Davis was during our final exams for our winter term. So we're on a quarter system. So I think just the sheer volume of activity in that last few weeks, I think we saw at the beginning there, faculty were like, I should just retire. I don't want to teach this semester. There was a lot of sort of initial panic. And I think what we're seeing now in the moment is people have become a lot more comfortable with the idea of remote instruction. And we're seeing, okay, that didn't work so well towards the end of that quarter. How can I do that differently in this quarter? So I think we're seeing a lot of confidence being built in the online learning space. So my institution, I would say we had a pretty low adoption for remote learning. So I think this confidence is pretty important for our institution. Okay. Another thing we're learning is that we have a lot of students, we have a lot of students that did not have the technology needed for this current environment. So we have a lot of rural students. We have probably about 5% of our population couldn't take exams online. So connectivity is an issue at an ag school when they're out in the agricultural areas. So we're learning a lot about, we've made a lot of investment in campus infrastructure and less in remote infrastructure. So we're learning, how do we support these students that need to connect to have access to these tools?
Okay, great, thank you. It sounds like So we're kind of gone from panic to the we can do it attitude. So let's go from West Coast to East Coast, and Kelvin over at UCF. What are you seeing right now?
So I'm kind of holding on to two learnings, as you say, right now in the shorter term era. First one is do no harm, and second is aspire to do a little bit better every semester. So first, do no harm. People are going through stuff, right? We need to emphasize humanizing strategies in our remote instruction efforts. We need to not also expect to meet, for faculty to meet the high standards of actual online courses in their temporary online delivery of face-to-face classes. That's unfair to the participating faculty and to their students. Realistic goals are important, and resources to meet those goals are important. And if we're not careful, we'll burn out students and faculty. So that's the first thing, do no harm. Second, aspire to do a bit better every successive semester or a quarter or whatever term you're on in which our COVID continuity efforts continue. So we should be helping our faculty and our students be just a little bit better prepared every academic term that this lasts. And we should also rely just a little bit more each term on actual intentionally designed online courses. That involves listening to faculty and students through surveys, focus groups, or whatever. And it involves deliberate preparation programs and support resources. If you follow that iterative approach, I think everybody at your institution benefits.
So it's kind of like a meet the faculty where they are and encourage the small steps moving forward every term. Great. So let's kind of move back across country. Sean, University of Michigan, what are you seeing?
Yeah, so I guess I would echo some of the things that were said previously and just add that in our case, we pivoted to online about 2/3 of the way through the semester. We literally had 4 days from the time the president made his announcement to being up and running online. We delivered about, I don't know, 65 classes or so over the following few weeks to hundreds of faculty members, getting them up to speed on some of the basics of the capabilities that we have. And I would say, broadly speaking, that was pretty successful in the sense that, we're doing it and have met the faculty where they are and where they were, and things seem to be going pretty well. I think now the challenge, and for the next few months as we think of looking forward to fall, is how do we improve on a incremental basis, on a daily basis, and start to look at more sophisticated kinds of interactions, bring more capabilities to bear. A couple areas in particular, I think mobile learning, we're going to have to be more intentional about that as our students are, now literally globally distributed, may not have access to all the equipment they would have at home and so forth. And then also, I think we're going to see more need and demand for data-informed decision-making around teaching and learning practices. So learning analytics broadly, I think is going to become more important as this activity increasingly moves online. It's going to be harder for faculty to really understand where their students are on an individual and aggregate basis. And so I think we'll start to build out more of those capabilities and work with faculty to develop those skills as we go forward.
All right, thanks, Sean. And it sounds like there were many years of preparation in the works there to be able to scale up within 4 days. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting situation.
We were fortunate in that a significant portion of our faculty already used the enterprise LMS, and so we weren't starting from zero. We were starting, 60 to 80% penetration based, depending on which unit you're talking about. And there was plenty of work to do getting the remaining faculty on board, but we certainly weren't starting from zero.
Right. Okay, let's go back over to the West Coast. David, what's been going on there at Oregon State in terms of what you've been learning?
Well, the quick move to remote teaching really brought to light critical concerns as well as bringing to light the fact that we had critical enterprise systems we thankfully had in place already. And so we could scale. We had started a strategic IT plan exercise at the first of the year, and the instructional learning/learning technologies task force that I co-chaired met first on February 14th, which now seems like a decade ago. And so we started brainstorming what would we need in 3 to 5 years. And little did we know what we were describing we would need in 3 to 5 weeks. Changes have occurred in a matter of days, but otherwise it would have taken years.
Mhm.
And but I think a couple of things that we notice is that, you know, we don't really have a comprehensive training to support technology literacy for students. And we lack resources to support faculty training in technology, pedagogy, and related topics, particularly for on-campus faculty. More resources have been available as probably in all of our areas as online programs have been built up.
Mhm.
I think the most important thing has really been how we've already acted on the human side, and
Mhm.
whether it's teachers, students, faculty, support staff, leadership, whoever it was, empathy, flexibility, and communication are really the 3 pillars that you make that day-to-day, that iterative progress on.
Mhm. It's really exciting in a way to see, you know, kind of the use of technology for the high touch, you know, which is really kind of the ultimately the best way to use technology. So, but let's focus now on the fall back to school. That's going to be interesting to say the least. And we'd like to start off there with Kelvin.
Yeah, so in terms of practices for this fall, I think I would advocate for 2. Again, I'll keep it simple. One is being deliberate, and the second is practice expectations management. Being deliberate. Be deliberate about prioritizing for fall, if at all possible, the teaching of fully online courses that have been developed by experienced and well-prepared faculty with access to support resources. Do
Mhm.
more of that and less ad hoc. Make that a priority. Fall back, because you won't be able to do all of it, right? Fall back if you need to remote instruction, but really look at where you can build on the past by blazing into the future with that deliberation. And in terms of practicing expectations management, I think that's multifaceted. It starts with institutional level communication to students and their families about how quality assurance is being pursued and how the academic term or successive terms will proceed. We're already seeing data being reported on massive concerns from parents about their students returning in the fall term to a remote instruction period and concerned about whether they're getting their money's worth. So institutional level, class schedule level communications must be explicit about what students can expect in that course in the term, technologically, like webcam
Mhm.
requirements, and logistically, like whether there's going to be synchronous class meetings at a certain date and time. And then faculty level communications in the syllabi and in direct messaging within the course must convey clarity in how the course will work, regardless of whether it's a deliberately designed online course or what we might call a circumstantially offered remote instruction course. Clarity for students is paramount from the top all the way through.
Okay, so we now have the time to be more deliberate, to provide more clarity. David, what do you think about that? Is that similar in your situation?
Oh, definitely. And then there's a couple of additional key things, at least for us, that we want to have in place really starting now and building for the fall term, which for us doesn't start until mid to late September. You know, to have our classrooms ready, have all of them have video conferencing capabilities so that we can do what you might call rotating classes, where a portion of the students are there for a given course session and rotate out while another group of students are there to maintain that physical distancing, that social distancing that's going to be required.
Mm-hmm.
The other is to build on what in some ways started happening organically in several of our colleges, where they put together remote teaching peer support teams. So groups of faculty that made themselves widely available to people with questions. And this happened in the College of Liberal Arts and the Honors College, also in the College of Business and our College of Engineering, and even others. And they're in the process now of in fact, one college is having a symposium this Friday where they're going to talk about faculty experiences and what they've learned around topics such as high enrollment courses and multi-section courses, good practices for that. What about courses with significant audiovisual or multimedia components? What about courses that are highly interactive with a lot of student-to-student or student-instructor contact, which could include honors courses, discussion-based colloquia, courses with experiential learning? How do you do this with seminars? Thinking of our graduate level research-based seminar courses, and even thinking of some of the basics of how do you prevent and respond to disruptive behavior. Now, people have a lot of experience doing that in a physical classroom and may feel kind of uncomfortable or unsure exactly what they can do, what they should do in a remote learning environment. And that's going to even be more challenging as some of the students are in the room, some of the students are outside of the room. How do you keep that engagement happening as well as maintaining the civil discourse?
Oh, some really, really great points there. And this idea of getting ready for the big blended, possibilities is really, really interesting, as well as the whole idea of the, faculty learning from each other now in terms of what they're experiencing. Sean, would you like to add something to the situation in fall?
Yeah, so lots of interesting things going on during this time. One that I'll comment on, I suppose more from a sociological perspective at the university, is this is really, my institution is highly decentralized, lots of people pursuing their own bliss, so to speak. And this has really forced us in a way to talk to each other and collaborate in ways that we haven't always had to do before. And so I'm part of a central IT unit, central support function. And our provost has named 6 different faculty-led task forces to prepare us for the fall. And we are working with a similar set, the library and other support functions on campus, to sort of receive the input from those working groups and then figure out exactly how we're going to meet those needs and scale and so forth. And so there's a level of, I would say, coordination here that we just haven't really had before, and that I think is a great opportunity to put in place some best practices and really try to scale some things that fundamentally are coming out of the faculty conversation about what they need and how they want to teach and so forth. So I think there's some really, really interesting opportunities. I will say that one of the things I think we're going to have to develop a little bit more than we have in the past is just more granularity and more asynchronicity in terms of how we deliver instruction. As a primarily residential institution, we've been in that mode for a long time, and online I think is going to require us to think a little bit differently about how we deliver instruction and cultivate communities. More signposts for learners to make sure that they understand where they are along the way. And that's going to present some interesting cultural and technical challenges.
Well, some great thoughts out there. It's very exciting to hear the opportunity that I'm hearing in your voices and what you're sensing out of all. So Meggan, what do you think about the fall?
Well, I agree with everything that's been stated so far. I mean, focusing on the asynchronous activities, really shoring that up, given that, probably about 5% of our students are in different time zones. So we're going to do a lot more investment in video and lecture capture, and faculty being able to capture from wherever they are. So I think there's going to be a big increase in that. We've seen a 300% increase in our video viewing and watching since this started. So it's pretty evident that that is a technology that is well received. So I think a gap that we're seeing potentially for fall that we haven't addressed or closed yet is the student-to-student interaction and the community, building community amongst our students, in particular the first years that have never been to campus, don't have the UC Davis experience or residential experience to build upon, and how important that is to their teaching and to their learning, and they're feeling engaged with campus. So we're starting to look at ed tech tools that will help build a student-to-student community, allow for study groups online, those types of activities that appear to still be a gap in fall. And then I also think a challenge for fall is still the academic integrity piece for us. We still have a lot of faculty concerns around online proctoring and exams and students cheating. And then we have concerns with students among privacy and proctored situations. So I think we still need to iron out a lot of details around the academic integrity piece.
All right, thank you, Megan. Really appreciate that insight on the student community piece. Now we're going to go to the most difficult one, which is to try to predict what might be the lasting impact from all of this. And we're going to let David kick that one off for us.
Well, I think we're getting a lot of acceleration in things that may already be underway. And a lot of it is around the changing identity of higher education compared to the past. A much changed mix of students and a wider range of individuals and the goals that they have for education. Less delineation between whether I'm in high school or community college or at the university, or I'm working and I'm trying to pursue a degree, I'm commuting. And all of this is going to really demand increased flexibility in the learning environment. A shift in models for credentialing, micro degrees, stack degrees, even subscription models, and even further blurring between what we thought for a long time were rather distinct modalities, face-to-face and online, hybrid and now remote teaching. And one of the biggest concerns we probably have to think about is how students are often asked to bear the cost of new technologies or services, like proctoring, that are adopted by courses. And so we have to be concerned about the access equity issues that we have in this flexible environment.
Wow, that's great. Kelvin, what do you think might be the long-term lasting impact of all this?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll keep it broad and basic, because the farther we get into the future, the less confident I am about my prognostication skills. One is, I think, not just the importance of contingency planning itself, but also the importance of online tools in the contingency planning process. So leaning into that use of online tools. For instance, having a learning management system shell for every course section, right? Setting up baseline expectations for faculty and courses, like having a syllabus online, having your Title IV financial aid engagement activity online, for instance, as a baseline expectation. That would help a lot, right? Some of that, well, both of those things we had in place at UCF, and we're fortunate, right? We didn't have quite as much disruption as some institutions have reported. And at my institution, at least, we're working through whether there really is a new kind of online teaching and learning that we should be embracing. For instance, value add synchronous online sessions. Is that a thing? It's not something that we've really embraced before in my institution, and we're struggling through that right now. And that's a good news, bad news proposition for us longer term. Good news, it's already embraced by certain disciplines, and so that's a good thing. Less good news, maybe, it might not be as flexible as needed by so-called non-traditional students, which has really big implications for the mission and mandate of higher education.
So kind of a common theme there between both David and Kelvin is really getting a chance now to think about how to mold this new kind of hybrid delivery to really the needs, of your populations and your different programs. Sean, what do you think might be the lasting impact?
Boy, I think there's going to be some really interesting conversations about the academic calendar and to what extent we can, continue our historical pattern of forcing all these activities into a semester structure, especially if we're in a situation where we come back face to face and then have to go back remote. That sort of back and forth, I think, could really be challenging. I think the idea of a competency-based approach might fit into that. That, of course, has deep implications for curriculum and how we think about structuring courses. I think those are going to be potentially really significant long-term questions to resolve. One that I'm sort of personally fascinated with is I think we're going to see more hybrid type approaches coming out of this indefinitely. And I think most of the attention in that context has been faced on the online piece. I'm also thinking that there's some really interesting opportunities in terms of the residential piece of a hybrid experience. How can we really, I'm just making this up, let's say you're on campus for two-week periods out of a 16-week semester. How do we enrich those 2 weeks to be so incredibly amazing and take advantage of all the resources of the physical institution? I think we could be a lot more intentional about that, and I think there's some really interesting ideas that could come out of that.
So increasing flexibility in terms of the different modalities and competency based, that's a really, really interesting thought. Okay, Meggan, you get a chance to bat cleanup on this question of what the lasting impact is.
Well, I agree with Sean. I think we're going to see a lot of pedagogical changes and a long tail to this in course design. And I think one of the things we'll see a lot more of is alternative assessments. I think high stakes exams and in our current format, our sort of traditional format, are already being revisited, already being rethought. Is there a way to assess learners differently as a result of teaching remotely? So I think we're going to see a long tail after COVID-19 with that. I also think David might have said this earlier, but the need around data and learning data will only grow from here. There's already lots of administrators asking questions about the COVID-19 learning data. And so I think they're going to see the power of what's in our systems in terms of learner activity. And I think we're going to see a lot more increase in data requests and interest in dynamic data.
Okay, so pedagogical impacts long-term, data long-term. Thank you, panelists. These have been really great conversation, and I wanted to thank all of you and your organizations for being leaders in our community, the IMS Global Learning Consortium. And really, thanks to you and people like you and the many people involved in IMS, I think it's helped us be better prepared for what has happened now. And this is a place where we like to talk about gnarly challenges like this in the long term. So we wanted to give you each sort of just a short parting shot here, just to talk briefly about what you think the impact on the IMS work might be, or the impact of IMS work on this or on the IMS work going forward because of this. Love to hear your thoughts, but just keep it brief, please. Let's start with Sean.
Yeah, sure. So the first thing that comes to mind is speed, right? We're in an environment now where we have to react very, very quickly. We don't have months and months to do integrations, for example. And so the ability to use a standards-based integration like LTI to bring a tool into our environment is just critical. And I think you'll see more of that play out in the marketplace as that becomes important. And then, of course, I would just add, I think going forward, we're going to see more students getting more credentials from a number of different places. And we're going to have to think about interoperability with respect to credentials. What does an extended transcript look like? How does that lead to a comprehensive learner record? And in order to make that really work and scale, you have to have some standards. And so I think IMS is well positioned to help drive and support that need.
Thanks, Sean. Meggan, your impact, what do you think about the impact of IMS
I
now?
think Sean hit my two highest impacts. I mean, the tools integration is so key with the speed and how fast we have to do it, had to do it, and will have to do it moving forward. And then again, the learner record with sort of students moving around in different modalities and spaces and probably institutions as a result of some of this. I think that's really a key piece.
All right, David, would you like to take a shot at that one?
You know, one of the interesting things that the whole situation has driven home is that your IT, particularly your learning technologies, are how you're now running the business. I mean, it is the core mission of the institution, and it's with these tools, that's how you're managing to make it happen, and more of that going forward. And the reason we've been able to build up a rich ecosystem in each of our learning platforms is because of these key system integration capabilities, of which IMS Global is the leading force for good in this area. You know, Gartner calls this whole strategy an exostructure strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And say that 10 times as a sobriety test later on today.
Thanks, David. And I guess we're going to give Kelvin the last word on this IMS piece.
Yeah, thanks. I'll just add my shout out to the learning tools interoperability standards, specifically LTI, LTI Advantage, LTI whatever. Not just in terms of third party, but you know, we are fortunate at UCF to have development resources where we use those standards ourselves to build custom integrations into the learning management system, and that has helped us help faculty adapt quickly through things like due date changer, which isn't real sexy in terms of its name or its function, but is really practical. Quiz extensions, a captioning request button in the LMS, those kinds of things we can really add value for faculty. And shameless plug, the IMS UCF Center of Excellence for LTI. Hey, if you've learned more appreciation for the LTI standard, hey, come and visit us online at cdl.ucf.edu/LTI Center and join our movement.
All right. Well, if IMS is a force for good, as David said, then that means all of you are certainly a major force for good. And I want to just thank you, Sean, David, Meggan, Kelvin, for your insights. And thanks to those of you who are tuning in or have tuned in. And we look forward to seeing you back here for more of this series on highly effective visual teaching and learning. This is Rob Abel saying bye for now, and let's keep the learning going. Thanks.